Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Be the Man podcast. My name is Eli Tilley, and oh my goodness, and I excited to be here today. I am flying solo today. Pastor Stacy is definitely a busy man, as we all are in the ministry, and he has just got a lot of things going on this week, so he's unable to be here with us this week. But I'm happy to be here, getting the opportunity to be able to share you guys a message about what the Lord has laid on my heart. I hope you guys have continued to be the man in your lives and in your relationships, and I hope that these podcasts help you a little bit. The aim behind these is for us to undertake our job description, just as Christ has laid out in Ephesians chapter 4 and 5, about loving our wives as Christ has loved the church. So, in this podcast series, I just hope that you guys can take something from this and leave a better man and leave a better Christian, knowing your job description, not only as a Christian, but as a godly husband. I think today in the realm of the world, in the realm of reality, oftentimes marriage and being a man is under scrutiny, and it is seen as something that is not as important, not very crucial, and is something that is not really, it's kind of looked down upon. It's something that is not taken very seriously. It's taken lightly, and for men and for godly marriages, the world's got us under scrutiny. So I think it's time for us to continue in this. We've definitely been doing it for the past year or so now. At this point, this is episode 53. So this has been in the planning for over a year, but been on the internet for at least a year. So our job or our interest and aim in doing this is so that we can take charge in this idea of being the man and not take it lightly, but step up as leaders and undertake our job description just as Christ has laid it out for us so well. So last week, Pastor Stacy, took the charge in leading us out in a great conversation about intimacy in marriages and what the Bible says about it's to be undefiled. It's supposed to be pure and holy and righteous. And I hope that was an encouragement to you. So if you didn't catch that one, go back and check it out. Pastor Stacy and we laid that out for you guys. And Pastor has got a lot of wisdom, and I love getting to do this podcast with him. So every week I can look forward to getting to hear what he's got to say in the realm of Be the Man. So this week, you're stuck with me, so I hope that that's okay with you, and I hope that I can bring you guys a little bit of a word today, and that we can just have fun. We can sit here and look at the Word of God in a fun way, look at it in an interesting way, and definitely in a theological way to where we can come away growing as a man and really understanding our job description. So I look at season 2 of Be the Man is what I'm sort of calling this next year, is season 2 of Be the Man. And I think that really the idea behind this second season is that we take our job descriptions, take the foundational principles, and take them a level deeper and really see how we can implement these things more than definitely in a practical level, but also just in a very realistic way of taking it to our lives, taking it and applying it to our personal lives and looking at it in the day-to-day. So last week we took the vein of intimacy, and Pastor Stacy really helped us go into a deeper dive into that and to really check out what it means. And today, I want to look at communication. We did an earlier podcast. Definitely go reference that on communication. Pastor Stacy did that right at around a year ago when we were laying down the foundational principles. And he really talked about what it means to understand, what it means to empathize, what it means to talk well, what it means to communicate clearly. Because a lot of times in our relationships, one of the greatest things that make them fall is that idea of ambivalence, of being unable to understand or being unable to trust what your spouse is doing or what they are saying. So to eliminate ambivalence, clear and concise and straight communication is the best way to do it. And Pastor Stacy definitely laid that out well. And today I kind of want to take a deeper look at that and to see what the Bible says for sure, but also just what ethics say. So we're going to look at communication ethics. It seems like a daunting sort of term. Seems like something that is hard to apply, but I can promise you that it is very applicable and it can really help us out as it has helped me, and I hope that it can help you guys as well. The scripture today that we're going to be looking at is James chapter 1, verse 19. It says this, "Know this, my beloved, brothers, let every person be quick to hear, slow to speak, slow to anger." And he goes on saying that anger does not produce the righteousness of God. So this idea that James is talking about here in this first chapter, I think this is what we're going to run with today. I think we got to look at this and we got to analyze it and we got to understand that our job descriptions are not to talk a bunch and not to give our opinions about everything. Our job descriptions are laid out here pretty clearly. Hearing and doing the word. Not saying it, but hearing and doing it. Knowing this, my beloved brothers, let every person be quick to what? Quick to hear, slow to speak, and slow to anger. So we're going to look at communication ethics. Let me give you guys my outline real quick. I'll give you the points, the big points, and then after that we'll go into it and look at it deeper. I will try not to take too much time today, but I want to get through this, and I want to get you guys to be able to understand this, and so we don't have to split it up into 2 episodes. There's a lot of good information here. So communication ethics is defined as principles and guidelines that govern behavior, considering the impact of your words, your actions, and your behavior. So communication in its own box is basically just the implicit or explicit discussion or interpretation from one person to another. Saying hi, hello, how are you doing? Or somebody can base their communication off their behavior or their actions. Those are definitely types of communication: verbal communication, digital communication with your phone, media communication, technological. There's all types of communication. But I think that taking communication a step deeper, especially in our relationship context of communication ethics, really helps us take a deep dive into this. So, communication ethics, like I said, is defined as principles and guidelines that govern behavior. Basically, just like I said, considering the impact of your words, your actions, and definitely your behaviors. So let's just look at this let's look at this in a scholarly sense. Shout out to my fiance Hope. Speaking of communications, she's getting her degree, her undergrad in this, and she is definitely the person that I can allude to on this. She has got a copious amount of knowledge on communication, and not only that, but she does so very well in communication. So I appreciate that, Hope. You are a great communicator, and I am very appreciative of that. So one of the points and one of the things that she actually gave me as a reference was this idea of dialogic ethics. And I think that if we look at this and apply it to our relationships, then we can see really how this applies to James chapter 1. So dialogic ethics are basically the fact in this idea that everyone is important, everybody has unique and valuable perspectives, and it advocates in moderation, not at the expense of others. It talks about understanding, relational, respect, willing to change, and what is really this idea of empathy rather than just monologuing. Pastor Johnny and I talk about this quite a bit, dialogue versus monologue. So some definitions and some examples of bad dialogic communication or bad dialogic ethics in communication would be things like lying or gossiping or invading privacy or complete and outright disrespect. These are some things that we definitely see often in the world today, and these are things that we have to change the narrative on. Being in youth ministry, one of the things that I think is lost in the younger generation, and I include myself in that generation, so don't hear me try to put shame on younger generations. I am in that younger generation. One of the things that tends to get lost is that idea of respect, of reverence and honor to other people. And this constant disrespect that is exuded by the younger generation is one of these things that we have got to help change the narrative on. So as men, let's take charge and show what respect really looks like. Respecting authority, dialogic ethics alludes to that. Respecting authority, being able to take criticism, being able to exercise our ability to listen. So lying, gossip, invading privacy, and ultimately disrespect all kind of fall under that bubble of bad communication ethics and ultimately disrespect. It's interpersonal kind of a thing. So shifting over to this good side of communication ethics, especially in the dialogical sense, what does the good ethics look like? Well, it's on the contrary of all those things. Honesty, being clear, being concise, being respectful, and ultimately listening. So being honest, being open with your communication, saying, hey, this is how I'm feeling about this. I don't want you to get any ambivalence. I don't want you to feel any way in shape or form that I'm lying to you or that you cannot have my trust or that you do not trust me. So being honest and practicing that and exercising that is definitely going to bode well for you. Being clear with your communication, being open, but yes, definitely open and definitely being honest, but being clear, saying what you mean and meaning what you say, Being very clear in communication is super important. There's been times, and I can definitely own up to this in my own relationship, where Hope and I will be talking about something, and she's like, "What do you mean by that?" It's like, that was kind of vague. I'm just trying to give a general definition of like, okay, let's go out to eat or something for a date. It's like, okay, but can you tell me where you want to go? Or can you tell me what time? Or can you tell me this? Or tell me the details of this? Clear communication, laying it all out, saying, this is what I mean by this, and I want you to understand the clarity of what I'm trying to say. Clean, clear, and concise. Concise is also good too. I think as men, a lot of times we are not very concise. There's the idea and the concept, guys, you know what I'm talking about, and girls, you probably do too if you're listening, of mansplaining. Don't mansplain. Mansplain is where you think that you have this superiority complex as a man, so you have to over-explain everything to somebody else because they don't understand. Don't fall into that. Don't mansplain. Be concise and get your point across clearly and concisely. Respectfulness. Being respectful, treating others with honor and with respect is very, very, very important. I think, like I just alluded to with the idea of disrespect, we have got to change the narrative on that and say, you know what? Instead of being disrespectful, and especially younger people out there, if you're listening, instead of disrespecting authority just because you don't like the person, try changing the narrative of that and respecting them because they are in authority over you. Even if you don't agree with what they're saying, even if you don't agree with who they are or like who they are, you have to respect those who are in authority over you. I've alluded to this a lot before. Having a mentor, having somebody that you do respect so you can exercise that respect well so it can spill out over into your life. Good manners, those kinds of things are definitely big aspects of that. And the last piece of what I want to really, really focus on today in a deeper sense is listening. I think a lot of times in communication, the idea of listening tends to get overlooked. Communication is oftentimes, like I said, defined as the implicit or explicit discussion, verbal or nonverbal, of between one person or another. Talking to each other, having a conversation, definitely having dialogue with one another, conversating, talking, speaking, verbal. That is a lot of times what we get this definition of communication from. But I think a lot of what communication really, really is listening, just like James said in this book, chapter 1 of James, verse 19. Be quick to hear, not quick to speak, quick to hear, but slow to speak and slow to anger. Being quick to hear, hearing what other people have to say, practicing that empathic listening, understanding and fully comprehending what the other person is saying. I think there's so many times that I think that especially as men, I know I'm a man. I've got the mind of a man. I understand how this goes. If somebody starts talking to me, there's going to be there have been times in my life, and there probably will be again, where I zone out. I'm looking at the person, I'm nodding, probably faking my understanding, but in reality, I'm really not retaining much of it. I'm not really listening. So if I were to be asked to recite that back again in a summative way, I probably couldn't do it. So again, another thing we have to change the narrative on of let's practice actually listening. This seems like a simple concept, but I think that it takes communication a step deeper just because it's so often overlooked. Because both of these things, listening and good communication and bad communication, they all affect trust. They all affect the trust that you might have or lack of trust in your relationship. So integrity is huge. Being open and trustworthy is key. So let's take these, consider them, look at them, understand them, but let's also go a step deeper in communication ethics. Just like I said, season 2, we're about going deeper. We're going to pick one of these things, and we're picking listening, and we're going to talk about that. Just because that's what like I said, it's overlooked, and also because James, he says it pretty clearly here in the Word of God. He says, look, a lot of people don't do this. We have become men of anger, men of wrath, men of being quick to speak, of being open to give our opinions. And what we have to understand and realize is that he says, look, everybody does this, but we have to try to do this, change the narrative. Let's try to be quick to hear, quick to listen. Proverbs says this as well, quick to hear, slow to speak, and slow to anger. So listening is huge. What are some basic aspects of listening. And I don't just mean like you're sitting here listening to this podcast right now. Whether or not you are retaining any of it or not, that's between you and the Lord. But listening, are you really listening to what I'm saying? In the same vein of you and your spouse. When your wife is talking to you, are you just kind of zoning out, or are you actually attentively listening to what she says? I kind of think about it this way. If you can't turn around and give her a summary of what she just said, then you probably weren't listening. And you might say, well, I can multitask really well. I know how to do this. Well, we're going to get to that. And the reality is you can't. So let's just look into that. And let's figure out how we can improve on this, what we can do better about this. 95% of people that you're having a conversation with are not listening to you fully. And most of the time, if they are listening to you, they're hearing what you're saying, but it's that old adage, in one ear and out the other. So let's change that narrative and let's look at what real listening is. I've got about 6 things here that I wrote out. We won't spend a whole lot of time on them just because I want to kind of help you guys get this concept, and we can look at it a little bit more in depth about the importance of it and the biblical connotation. So the first thing is have full attention on what you are talking about. Listening is huge, absolutely, but having that person's full attention, or you're giving them your full attention, is huge. I think about in a teaching aspect. I teach every week, multiple times a week. I get the privilege of preaching to the youth and teaching to them every week, Sundays and Wednesdays, and in other realms of youth ministry and ministry in general. But one of the things that I've noticed about teaching is that when I don't have their full attention, I get kind of distracted in my own mind that they're not listening to me, so I'm not going to be able to fully express what I want to get across because I don't think that they're retaining it or understanding it. So put this back in your relationship. Put this back in between the husband and the wife. If you're talking to your spouse, or even like I'm not married yet, but in my engaged relationship, if I'm talking to Hope, my fiance, and I feel like she's not really listening to me, then I'm not going to really try. I'm not going to try as hard at talking. I'm not going to really give her my best explanation or give her my best conversation, and vice versa. If she's talking to me and she gets the sense that I'm not being fully attentive to her, then there's a good chance that one, she's probably, knowing Hope, she would probably just stop talking to me and say, "You're not listening. Why don't you listen to me?" Or she might not really fully accept, or she might really fully think that I'm listening, so she might just not really give me her best answer, or really explain it well enough for me because she thinks I'm not listening. So giving your full attention is very important in making sure that you are giving them your best. Give your spouse your best. We talked about that in multiple podcasts, and one of those ways is listening, but giving your full attention up to them, being fully attentive, being fully engaged in the conversation. And then what that means, the next thing is giving eye contact. Again, I've noticed this a lot in, again, my generation and other generations younger than me. Eye contact is one of those things that seems to be lost. Not maintaining proper eye contact, not listen. Showing your eye contact proves that you're really listening. But if you're wandering and looking at other things, and of course, the speaker is not going to understand, or they're not going to think that you understand what they're saying. So giving eye contact, full attention, eye contact, and then all these kind of tie in together to this third thing of avoiding distractions. This is one of the biggest distractions. If you can't see me on video, I'm holding up my cell phone. One of the biggest distractions. I don't know about you, but I know from my personal experience that if I'm talking to someone and they're texting on their phone, then I definitely don't feel like I have their attention. And the reality is, I really don't. So whenever you are on your phone and somebody's talking to you, especially if it's your wife and she's trying to tell you a conversation, or tell you about an important conversation, and you're texting, and you say, "Well, I understand what she's saying. I really do." Well, the statistics show that you don't. Most of the time that you're on your phone, you are splitting you're splitting your attention span. Your attention span is shrinking second by second. So you're trying to focus on 2 things at once. So you're going to give half of your attention to your wife and the other half to the phone. You're really not fully retaining either one of them in what's going on in that realm. So a practical way to do that is if you have a really important text to take care of, or a phone call, or something that is pertinent that you need to look at, it would be good practice to say, "Hey, let me continue this conversation in just a few minutes. I need to go ahead and send this text out before I forget, or I need to do this thing on my phone before I forget about it, and so that it won't weigh on me. So avoiding distractions. Our cell phone is a great example of this, but there can be many other things. If you're in a room full of people and you hear another conversation that you just want to go hear, but you're engaged in one conversation, don't go running off to the other one, or don't try to split your attention to both. Say, I got one ear over here and the other one over here. Our brains are not meant to process these kinds of things. So don't try to be doing, or don't try to be engaging in that sort of thing, especially with your spouse. So if you and your wife are on a date and you are listening to the conversation at the other table and your wife is talking to you, then you might be listening to her, quote unquote, but you're really not retaining anything and you're really not giving her your full attention. So then the fourth thing is projecting genuine interest. I think this is another really big point. If somebody's talking to you, if somebody's telling you something, and you're listening to this person, yes, give them your full attention. Maintain proper eye contact, and definitely avoid distractions. But if somebody's passionate about something, telling you something that they were explicitly telling you about, they didn't want to tell anybody else. They wanted to give it to you. They wanted to give you this information. What are you supposed to do? Are you supposed to be like, oh yeah, that's decent. Yeah, whatever. I don't really care that much. I'm listening to you and I'm retaining the information, but I really don't care. No, you have to project a genuine interest. Unless it's something, like I said, you guys are smart enough to know that if it's not something that is interesting to you at all, and you know that the conversation is not productive, and you can get a sense of discernment with this and it's not productive, that's a different scenario. But with your spouse, and she's got something that she had on her mind to tell you particularly, then you need to show a genuine interest and say, yes, I care about what you're saying. And not just fake it. You have to mean it and say, I do care about what you're saying, not only because of the content of what she's talking about, but because of the person and who she is. So honestly, if Hope could have anything on her mind that she wants to tell me about, it could be anything as simple as, that she's going to drive to the gas station to fill her car up, or something as drastic as, she's got a big event coming up. And I'm going to listen to both of those with the same amount of care and treat them with equal importance, to show a genuine care, show a genuine interest, again, to eliminate that ambivalence, to build the trust, and to allow her to have me as a safe space. To say, I can tell Eli anything because I know that he's going to listen. I know that he's going to give me his full attention. I know that he's going to have maintained proper eye contact because he's proving that he is engaged in this. And I also know that he's going to project and show this genuine care and interest in what I'm saying to him and what I'm trying to tell him. So avoiding interruptions, avoid distractions, avoid these kinds of things is very important. And then the last thing is paraphrase and ask clarifying questions. So then you hear all these things from me. You say, well, I'm sitting here, right? My wife's talking to me. She's got my full attention, I'm giving her eye contact. I'm avoiding distractions. I'm showing genuine interest. Well, how do I project this genuine interest? What does that mean? I mean, is it just a body language? Well, absolutely, it's a body language. But it's things like, I'm listening to you, and I'm going to prove that I'm listening to you by paraphrasing. Like, oh, you have this event coming up, and you're going to do it at this time on this day, and you have these people going with you. Okay, let me paraphrase that back to you and give you that response back, so that way I can prove to you that I'm listening and that, wow, I'm interested. Asking clarifying questions like, hey, can you update me on this? Or what did you say again, so I can write this down or retain it? Those kinds of things. That way you can show that you're engaging in the conversation and turn it from a monologue to a dialogue, an open communicatory interaction that's interpersonal. So we're going to highlight back over these before I move on. Full attention. Give your full attention, especially, and I mean this in the relationship dynamic with your wife. I do mean this, yes, in every other context when you're talking with people in work and school or whatever, but I especially in the Be the Man context, mean this for your spouse. Give her your full attention. There is nothing more important going on than what your wife has to say. I can about guarantee you that. Give her your full attention. Have and maintain proper eye contact. Make sure that you are looking at her and not looking at everything else going on in the room. Again, I don't know about you guys, but for me and Hope, she's my fiance. When she's sitting across from me and we're on a date at the dinner table, there's not a whole lot that I would like to have my eyes on except for her. I bet you there's pretty much nothing unless there was like a plane coming through the building. She's about the only thing that I can say what I want my eyes to be on, and that is her. So maintain proper eye contact. Avoid distractions. Again, put yourself in the speaker's shoes. If you are talking to somebody, you don't want them to be on their phone the whole time. You don't want them to be trying to talk to somebody else. You want their full attention. You don't want them to have a distraction. So avoid distractions. And then project a genuine interest. Show that you care. Show that the conversation is important to you, just as important as it is to them. Whether you agree or disagree with what they're saying, you have to show a genuine care and a genuine interest in what they are telling you. So project that genuine interest. And how? By paraphrasing and asking clarifying questions. So I wrote this down because I think this is important for us to know when listening to anybody, especially our spouses. Listening is not just hearing words, but it is attentively understanding and empathizing. It's not just the act of listening to somebody talk and hearing the words that are coming out of their mouth. If you are doing that in this podcast right now, that's okay. I don't take that great of offense to it. I completely understand if I'm monologuing and you are having a hard time following because my voice is putting you to sleep or something. I can understand that, sure. But that's not the idea of real listening. That's not the idea of especially empathic listening. It's not just hearing words, but it's attentively understanding and empathizing, actively engaging in the conversation, understanding that, hey, my wife has got something important for me to hear. My girlfriend, my fiance, my dad, anybody in your life, my mom, whoever's talking to you, this person has got something important to say. I need to stop what I'm doing and I need to be attentive to them. I need to show respect to that person and exercise this idea of listening. Respect ties all the way back into this for sure, especially in your spouse's relationship. Do not disrespect your spouse by not listening to them. That is one of the greatest ways that you can show disrespect. So if you want to prove that you don't respect them whatsoever, then yeah, go ahead and text away while they're talking to you. Or yeah, go ahead and look around the room and think about something else. Or yeah, go ahead and show that you're not interested. No, you need to change that narrative and say that I respect this person more than anybody else. So I'm going to give them my full attention and I'm going to listen to them just as I would want them to listen to me. So, tying this back to James 1:19, and I'll finish with this. I'll keep this, I'm going to keep it right under 30 minutes, so I'm hoping I can get there. How do we tie this back into a biblical precedent? How do we tie this back into the Bible? Being hearers and doers of the word. So he says, know this, my beloved brothers, let every person be quick to hear, slow to speak, and slow to anger. Yes, interpersonally and in communication ethics, this is definitely applicable in your lives as men, in your relationships. But I also think this strongly ties back and correlates with our relationship with God. And how can we practice this with our relationship with God? Yes, prayer is very powerful. We are to pray and lift up our petitions to God. And sometimes I find myself doing this, practicing the 1 Peter 5:7, casting my cares on him because he cares for me. And I start monologuing to God, telling him about my day, telling him about my life, telling him what's going on. But I never take time to listen. It seems that I get so caught up talking that I don't take time to listen. And I found myself recently in the past couple years that I've started to really listen for God. And he says that his children will know him by his voice. So they'll know the voice of the shepherd. So I started to really listen for the voice of God. And instead of never listening, instead of just talking all the time, instead of just lifting things up to him, which you are to do, but you have to equalize that out with the listening. So I ask God for answers. You can ask him for answers. I did this a lot when especially as a new Christian, and growing up, I did this a lot of asking God for things, but not hearing anything back. Well, it's because I wasn't listening. Yes, and you take this principle of every one of these things that I just talked about of not giving your full attention. You've got to give your full attention to God. A lot of times we have so many things going on that we can't even hear what God is telling us. We are reading the Bible, sure, you can be reading the Bible, but you're reading words. You're not comprehending, you're not understanding, you're not really retaining what the Lord is telling you. You cannot have so many distractions in your way that you can't pay attention to what God's trying to tell you. He speaks through his word. He speaks through other people. And sometimes he can speak to us very clearly in that still small voice. But you can't hear that voice. You can't hear those other people. And you can't really hear his word if you're not really listening. So take that into practice. Yes, in your relationship with your spouse. That's what we're all about in Be the Man. But also in your relationship with the Lord. Avoid distractions in your quiet time with God. Avoid your cell phone at all costs when you're praying. Avoid your cell phone when you're reading the Bible. Avoid distractions. Avoid trying to, these interruptions, the busyness of life that can get in the way. But pay attention to God. That's what Hebrews chapter 2 tells us about. You cannot neglect something that's so great. Pay attention to him. Give him your full attention. Just prove to him that you're listening to him and say, God, I'm going to sit down for a little bit and I'm going to ruminate in what your word tells me, and I'm going to listen for your voice, whether that is through your word, through what the Bible's telling you. They call it the living word because every time I open it up, I can definitely attest to this, that I get something new from it every time. So he can speak to us from that. He can speak to us through other people. Whenever there are people who are wiser, older and wiser than me, I oftentimes just go ahead and shut my mouth. I'm going to listen to what that person's got to say because there's a good chance that the Lord's trying to speak through them to give me something from him. And also, he can speak to us through that still small voice that we know it's his voice, not just our own thoughts, not just our own conscience, and definitely not the enemy, because God is not the author of confusion. He's the author of peace, of guidance, and tranquility. So you guys go out there and be the listening man today. Listen to your spouse. Listen to your family. Listen to what other people are telling you. Be a good, active, engaging listener, and also implement that in your spiritual walk with God. And I can just about guarantee you that it will bode you well in your life journey as a man. So guys, I hope this has been a help for you today. I hope that you can go out and be the listening man. Implement this. Try it out. Maybe today, as soon as you are done hearing this podcast, go to your wife and say, hey, honey, tell me about your day. Tell me what's going on in your life. I'd like to sit down and listen to you for a little bit and see how that goes for you. And I'd love to hear back from you guys. Always, the podcast is shareable. There's always a section for comments. So give me your feedback. Tell me how your marriages are going. Tell me how your relationships are going, how your walk with God is going, and how me and Pastor Stacy can come alongside you and help you out in every day of your life. We love you guys. Make sure you share this out. Send it to somebody, and we will get back with you next week on Be the Man. I love you guys.